Hey, Joe, are you a prankster?
I've never played a prank in my life.
I don't buy that for a minute. There is an abundance of good-natured pranks among members of the military. It's sort of like a rite of passage, as we all know. And I got to thinking about such shenanigans when I ran across a veteran's story. So it goes like this. At C++ reference said, my unit in Afghanistan would be awake during the night and sleep during the day. One of the pranks we would play on each other was taping mouse traps right next to the light switches. Oh gosh, that sounds painful. I was once ordered to go over to supply and pick up striped paint to repaint the hallway in my unit. How about you,
Oh
Joe?
gosh.
What kind of pranks and shenanigans were you up to when you were in service?
Okay, I don't recommend anyone ever do this, but one of the things that we did almost as a joke was well, of course it was a joke, but we if somebody was asleep and they were all wrapped up in their sleeping bag, I would I would wrap my arms around them while they were asleep. From like behind, I would go, "It puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again." And everyone knew that I would do it, and so, it was just like, 2 seconds when you first wake up, like, "What is happening?" before the voice started, that was funny. And then
Ah.
another one, and this is my very favorite thing, and I don't know why it's so funny, but so when we were going through, FMSS in Camp Pendleton, I don't know what started it or who started it. I think it was my buddy Sparks, but somebody would walk up and someone at the table would say, and I said, wrecked him, dang near killed him. And then everybody would bust out laughing because there's no start to that joke that anyone knows of. But it was so dumb that it eventually legitimately became funny. And so anytime anyone did it, when somebody walked up, we were like crying laughing, and it just the longer it went throughout training, the funnier it got. And especially when you had 20 people in on the joke and somebody walked up who had managed to have never heard it before, because you have 25 people laughing at a joke that you feel like you just missed the first half of. It was just funny because it was harmless. The other one was did have a victim. This one was a little more harmless.
Thank you, Joe. I'm officially traumatized.
You're very welcome.
Okay, enough joking around, alphas. Let's get this show started.
This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show for you today, but unfortunately, Adam is basket weaving under the Atlantic Ocean. He's going to miss out on the fun. Okay, while we're here recording, he's busy with the VMHLC in Washington, D.C., advocating on behalf of America's veterans. And that's important work, so we'll hold down the fort while he takes care of business on Capitol Hill, but he's going to miss out on a great guest. So this week, we're visiting with Israel Del Toro, an Air Force senior master sergeant who was injured while serving in Afghanistan in 2005, and in 2010 became the first 100% disabled veteran to re-enlist in the Air Force. He has an incredible story of resilience that you're just not going to want to miss. But before we get to that, let's hand out another Bravo Zulu.
One of the ways the American Legion is different from other veteran organizations is our support of young people through youth programs and scholarships, Child Welfare Foundation grants, and all the ways individual posts support kids in their own communities. April is Children and Youth Month, if you didn't know that, in the American Legion. So for this week's Bravo Zulu, we want to recognize how the Fred Brock American Legion Post 828 in San Antonio, Texas supports youth in their own community. In celebration of Martin Luther King Day, members of Post 828 joined forces with HEB Grocery Store, that happens to be the place where my husband worked before he joined the service, and
Nice.
Foot Locker to give 50 local high school students new shoes. 30 junior ROTC cadets and 20 other students, along with a parent or guardian, were invited to the HEB Operation Appreciation Project shoe event, where they were each given $100 to buy a pair of sneakers and any other items from the Foot Locker. Sounds pretty generous. Quote, it means the world to cadets and their families as well to know that there are organizations like the American Legion, which is looking out for their well-being and keeping their best interests at heart, said retired Army Colonel Christopher Winder, the senior military instructor at Highlands High School. There is a need that each student has, and we thank Fred Brock Post 828 for creating this initiative. It is a very thoughtful one, and we appreciate the support, end quote. Man, this is great.
I love that.
I
That's
wish
really, when I was growing up, I had a shoe size that went up about every 6 months. I started out at like a 10, and then I'll never forget, is my favorite story with my mom. I had turned 14 about halfway through that year. I went into a 15 shoe. And my mother, I had been waiting since I went into a 15 shoe for her to slip up. And finally, one day she said, act your age and not your shoe size. And I said, thank you, Mom. And I got in trouble, and it was worth it.
I hope you got snacked on the lips.
I probably needed that, but no. We kind of have a rule, and that one transferred over to my kids. If it's funny, you get away with it once.
Well, you must have got away with it a lot.
I tried. That's where I learned to be funny. It was that or get beaten. But I love this because I think it's a really good example of a local post being a part of the community, as a local partnering with a local business to address a need. And I think that it's so important to look for those opportunities, because I think that a lot of times we see these big national chains like Foot Locker, and we forget that a lot of those businesses are franchised and are owned. And I don't know if Foot Locker is this way, but it sounds to me like the store owner or manager has the power to do things like that, whether it was of his own personal money, or whether it was something that that Foot Locker themselves had been able to give him funds to do so.
Yeah.
But either way, the heart behind it is great. I love partnering local businesses and a local post together.
I agree. This is a great example of that partnership. And hey, Alphas, if you've got another great example of how you are supporting youth in your communities, be sure to send that to us. If you're showing how veterans are strengthening America, we want to know about it. Send it on over.
We'll have a link in the show notes where you can read more about this event and other great things that posts are doing in the Legiontown website at legion.org/Legiontown. And don't forget, you can submit stories about what your post is doing on Legiontown as well. You never know when we might choose to hand out a BZ to you. Bravo Zulu. Okay, Alphas, please stick around. We'll be right back to talk with Israel Del Toro right after the break, and I am excited.
Attention veterans! When it comes to Medicare Advantage, WellCare and the American Legion think you deserve more. Call today to find out about the WellCare Medicare Advantage plans that give you more benefits alongside your VA benefits. Visit wellcareforveterans.com today. That's wellcareforveterans.com, or call 844-917-1165. Ohana Health Plan, a plan offered by WellCare Health Insurance of Arizona, Inc. New Mexico Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan, DSNP members. As a WellCare by Allwell DSNP member, you have coverage from both Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid services are funded in part by the state of New Mexico. New Mexico Medicaid benefits may be limited to payment of Medicare premiums for some members.
This guest I've known for about, 16, 17-ish years after we met doing adaptive sport competitions together for the Air Force. Anyway, I think, and I'd like to say that we became really fast friends and bonded over the mutual love for the F word and cracking jokes at very inappropriate times. We found each other during a time when our lives were, I guess, being redefined, for a lack of better ways of saying it. We were both still unlocking our new normal potential. But in some ways and in many ways, this guy really surpassed me. And it was inspiring to watch him skyrocket into being a gold medalist, an SB awardee, a published author, an all-around celebrity name dropper in the who's who of famedom. And I'm not just blowing sunshine, y'all. This guy really made it. And when you hear what he has, or what he was up against, you will be glowing as much as I am. Alphas, this dude is something else. He's known by most folks as Senior Master Sergeant Israel Del Toro Jr. His family calls him Junior. His friends, and I'd like to think I'm one of those, call him DT. DT, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Hey, thanks, Stacey. Thanks for having me on. I like how you presumed you're my friend.
I know. Big assumption.
What do your enemies call you? You don't have to answer that.
His name shall not be spoken.
There.
Hey, so DT, last spring when you called me and you said that you were going to be publishing a book, which is, Patriot's Promise right here, I was excited for you. And, in many ways, I really avoid military books or movies, especially when they're true stories. But for one, I'm sorry I missed your launch party. Thanks for the invite. Farm life is crazy as you know it, so I'm sad I didn't make it. But I'm sure the who's who people I mentioned before were all there. But anyway, when it dropped on Audible, I tuned in, and I gotta say, I was out doing my chores, crying my eyes out on multiple occasions. And not because your story is sad, but because it was so relatable. And especially hearing what Carmen went through, your wife, when you were still in the hospital, still in an induced coma. So as much as I'm, I don't want to give away your book too much. People need to read it. But for the alphas listening, can you, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, kind of give us a little backstory about your military service, your getting wounded, and what recovery was like?
Yeah, so I came in '97. I volunteered to be a TAC P. Now we're all under a new title called Special Warfare. What I do is I call it airstrikes, and that's my primary job. So I did that for a couple of years, honing my skills, deployed a couple of times. Then the day I got hurt was December 4th, 2005. And then I was on a mission with the scout team, and we got ambushed when we were coming back to pick up the rest of our guys. And an IED exploded underneath me, and an IED. And, I got hurt. Obviously, you can see that, I got severely burned. But, once I got hit, most people think that, you're like down and out. But for some reason, I had to still do my mission because, it was a planned ambush. As soon as I got hit, we were caught in a crossfire. And then the guys also that were going to pick up, so they're calling for help. So, even though as I'm wounded, I still had to figure out what to do to call in the airstrikes. So that's my job. Luckily, one of the other scout members had a radio called an embedder. And I pretty much told him, repeat everything I say so we get some aircraft in here. And by the time the last transmission went out, that's when I started getting scared. I never tell people, as much as I would like to be that I was like Rambo, and for the moment I was, but once I guess the adrenaline all kind of calmed down, that fear of, okay, I'm having a hard time breathing. Where's this medevac? Why is it taking so long? It started overcoming me, and that's where, one of my the medic was trying to keep me calm and get me trying to focus, keep me going, and he used my spark, because I like to say we all have a spark, something that drives us. It's funny, here's a burn guy talking about we all have a spark, but we do. And sometimes we can find it on our own. Other times we got to, need help finding it. And the medic knew what my spark was, and he knew it was my son, and he knew what had happened in my life. And so he used that to keep me going until the medevac came. Now, remember, they wanted to carry me out, and I was like, oh, hell no. It's like, well, I walked into this fight, I'm going to walk out. So, like, how would my naked butt to the helicopter, remember the flight, landing our fob, seeing the doctor cutting off my watch, telling me I'm okay. And again, I said that was December 4th, 2005. I wake up March 2006. So then after that, obviously the recovery, it's, you mentioned earlier how I had my wife's story in there, and I thought it was very important to do that. Because a lot of times organizations, the military, news focuses a lot on the service member, which understandably, but they forget about the family members. They forget how, I like to say, they see us at our worst. because I was in a coma for 4 months. So I had no idea what's going on. But she's the one getting the phone calls. They're the ones being told, hey, this is what you got to do, or you don't do it, he may die. So I wanted to include her story in it. Now I kind of regret it a little because everyone keeps talking about her story. I'm like, dude, it's my book. She can write her own damn book. But you know, I thought it was important for that. For me, it really was important for me to do that. And obviously, you know, once I woke up, you know, I started fighting to, you know, overcome the odds. You know, people telling me that I'll never walk again, be on a respirator for the rest of my life. You know, and I'll be in the hospital another year and a half, and my military career is pretty much over. But I never accepted that, you know, and I just fought, and I continued to fight until, you know, I left that hospital, walking and breathing my own, and then eventually re-enlisted in the Air Force and retiring finally in, was it August 2019?
That's killer, man. I don't think that people have a clue the impact a good spouse can have on your recovery. I don't think people realize how important spouses are and what they go through. I don't think that people even have a clue what it's like. I think one thing for sure, the physical side of my injury, and you may not know my story, but I was a corpsman with 2-1 Marines. I lost my left leg, but well, I didn't lose it. I knew where it went. It went everywhere, but I got blown up, left leg's gone above the knee, and right ankle's been completely reconstructed, knees reconstructed, my ankle's fused. So I think that one thing that I realized is how important it was to communicate openly with my wife, because for me, it took me about 5 years for me to realize I needed to be completely open, because they go through the worst part of what we're going through. They feel all the stress and all that stuff and the mental things. When somebody around you that you love is struggling, that's what you feel. Because to be honest, as hard as the physical stuff was, as you know, for guys like us, that's the simple part. It's not easy, but it's like, don't die, get better, work out. And it's almost like a continuation of what we've been trained to do. But communication is not what we're trained to do with our spouses sometimes, and it takes a lot. So my question is, when did you realize that you needed to communicate openly with your life? Like I said, it took me 5 years. You seem smarter than me. So it probably was a little quicker. And how did that impact your recovery after having sat so long on the brink?
Well, for me, I think it was when I kind of, my eyes opened up with my wife is when, before I deployed. You know, I always thought I was being a good dad, that I was there. But I was at the prime of my career. So I was always gone. Boom, boom. There's a mission. All right, I'm out. But, you know, it took to right before I deployed, because I had found out I was going to head off to Afghanistan when I was stationed in Korea. And that would have been like November, December timeframe when I found out. And I didn't tell my wife until June, 2 months prior to my deployment. And because I just didn't know how to, you know, tell her. I had plans how to, but they always freaking failed on me. And then, you know, that's when she told me, you know what? After this assignment, you got to get out. And again, it wasn't her being vindictive. It was because I always thought I was being a good dad. I was always going to be there for my son. But yet my boy was going to turn 3 years old, and he knew me maybe 6 months out of his life. So I wasn't seeing that, you know. Obviously I was hopefully, you know, once I came back, I would have changed, you know. But you know, after the injury, you know, we were, you know, pretty open. I think the hardest thing for us was her not letting me be independent. Because, you know, she wanted to be there for me. She wanted to help me. She wanted to, like, no, let me do this, or I'm never going to be able to do stuff myself. So that was our hardest thing for us. But, you know, from the injury on, you know, we've had that good communication. You know, obviously, yeah, we've been married 22 years. So you're gonna have arguments. It's gonna happen. No one has the perfect marriage, but we have a better communication with each other. Luckily, I had her, I had my teammates. I was never that type of guy that, kept everything inside. I would tell you how I felt. I would tell you if this bugged me. Uh, the hardest thing for me was, you know, not being independent. That was the hardest thing. That's where I think most of our arguments came from, where I needed people now to help me do simple things that I used to do by myself.
That's
But
humbling,
you
humbling,
know,
humbling.
it is, it's when you used to be able to do all this stuff and now you rely on everybody to do certain things. It's frustrating. And and sometimes, if I could, my frustration with my wife, I will talk to one of my teammates, just to kind of get me kind of settled down, or my brother and sister, but you always have to have that support. We always, as much as we try and think that we're freaking, unstoppable Superman, we do need that help. No one can do it on their own. And, you know, lucky I knew I had that concept, maybe because, I lost my parents at a young age and I had to learn how to rely on other people. But I was okay with that.
So speaking of help and people needing it, so after I got blown up, the Air Force was still at that sort of ideology that airmen were really seeing the war from 14,000 feet. And, for people who are on ground operations, like in jobs like you and me, DT, that, was not the case. And I don't know as they were necessarily ready to see injuries like yours to that extent, or mine and everybody else that kind of came after. But um you were instrumental in helping establish AFW2. Can you talk to me about what kind of support you did or didn't have that made you feel it was time to make something like that a reality?
Yeah. For me, it was when I woke up and I saw how, don't get me wrong, I had my teammates and a lot of our branch did step up to be there, but I just didn't see the support like the other branches had. They had case managers that were there, and they had all these other operating moving parts that will help the person. And because they all had it in one central located area. If I needed help for something, I had to go here or I had to go there. And I just felt that, we always like to say that the Air Force is the best at taking care of their people. But when it came to our wounded warriors, our wounded service members, we were just dead last. We didn't have that support. We didn't have that, okay, what happens after? What if this guy wants to continue on? When you're put on, what's it called?
PDRL?
A medical hold.
Yeah.
You don't get recognized for anything. You don't get an EPR. You don't get nothing. And most people think, when you finally get, promoted, go for promotion, it's your last 5 EPRs. Technically, no, it's the last 5 years. So when I finally came up for the first time to promote, I had 0 EPRs, 0 points. So, I started trying to change that. Luckily, I had great people behind me, Mr. Beckett, Mr. Myers, Chief McKinley, all these guys. I brought my concerns to them. I was like, we need to fix this, because a goal for anyone that's in a leadership role is to make things better for those who follow them, even though they may never see the benefits. And so a lot of these benefits that I helped change, I never got to see. But it was okay. God forbid anyone, went through what I went through, but if they did, they will have those things there for them to help them. They wouldn't have to struggle like I had to struggle, because it was tough. It was tough having you had to go this place to get this help. You had to go this place to this help. My family needed help. They had to go to this location. There was never a centrally located area where everything was located that can get that help.
Well, and
And
that there's no manual to it either, so you don't know what you don't know. And
yeah,
yeah.
and
So
then like I said, the I was lucky because I did, you know, my teammates, my career field, you know, Randolph Air Force Base, the chief there, Chief Page, at the time, they all stepped up to help me, take care of me, and I was grateful for that. Yeah, I know other people like yourself and they had it harder because they had really no one around them. They didn't have that support, and but again, even though I had that support, I saw that it wasn't enough to make the transition easier. It just seemed harder.
mhm.
Yeah. So that's what I try to do. And you know, it is kind of crazy that the AFW2 is based off my suggestions, my things to help us get better. It is kind of weird when when I hear guys afterwards like, man, DT, thanks for what you did, thanks for helping set up this AFW2. And it's for me it's like, hey man, I just did what I hope any of us would have done in that situation. Uh, and so that's one of the cool things I'm happy about, that I did help establish, is that AFW2.
No, thank you a lot for that, and I'm sure there are plenty of airmen whose lives you changed because of that too, inadvertently.
Thanks, Stacey.
So, speaking on that, I feel like that sense of support that you wanted other people to have came from the gap in your own, obviously. So when people come back from war, they're supposed to be training for decompression. There's supposed to be all these things that are available for you. But when I was injured and I got hurt September of 04, and so alternatively, we've sort of semi-crossed paths a few different times through different organizations. I think we did a dinner in like 2006. I don't remember. I think I've seen you a few times, but I don't believe we've ever really gotten to speak. So it's a side note there. I've sort of passively been following your growth and career, and
Sure.
I think that you're incredible. So, but I wanted to say that on my end, I too felt like my wife and I were left on our own to figure things out. I had a 3-month-old daughter I'd never even met when I got hurt. And first time I held her, I was in the hospital. And y'all, I'm like on the verge of, I don't know what's going on with me today, but like all this is just touching me in a way that is very personal to me. Your story is very similar. The struggles that your wife and your family has had to go through. These things are very personal to me too. And so, I have a lot of love and respect for everything that you guys have been through. So I want to thank you first of all for stepping in and filling that gap. And like I said, I know your journey was similar. So how do you think that lack of support, that external support, affected your family? Like you, I had some guys come and show up and visit me and stuff like that, which is one of the reasons I made it through, I think, and got out of that hospital with my brain, pointed in the right direction. And how do you think, and I know we don't sit in what ifs because it's not good, so I don't want to really ask how do you think better support would have impacted you, but how do you think that lack of external support affected your family? Do you feel like in some ways, like when things get hard, I step up, and you obviously do too. Stacy does. We're here because of that. So my question to you is, how do you think that lack of support has affected you both positively and negatively?
Well, positively, help me kind of, improve things, you know, because I saw what things were missing that we needed to fix. And I went, in it. Negatively, you could say it affected like my career, because, I didn't get to be recognized, or get those EPRs. So when I wanted to get promoted, I didn't get promoted, you know. So I was behind the curve, even though, I wasn't, you could say the typical guy that got hurt, go to therapy, went home and chilled. I wasn't that guy. I was with therapy. All right, let's fix this. Let's get this program better, make things better for my fellow airmen, my fellow warriors. So that's only the real negative thing. But again, I try not to what if. You can what if forever, and it's going to drive you insane. What if this? What if that? It is what it is. You do you tackle what's in front of you. As best you can. To improve it. And if you can't get that help to help you improve. Like I said, I mentioned some names. Mr. John Becker, unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. He passed away a couple of years ago to cancer. Mr. Myers, and then Chief McKinley. I had those guys by my side that will help me if I didn't know the answer or how to solve the problem, I can reach out to them. Hey, how can I do that? So, it's just, I guess, a way of looking at things. Some people's like, oh, screw that. Why am I going to go? I'm just going to go through my physical therapy, get out. But, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make things better because if someone wanted to transition to continue to serve or transition out, they had an easier path to do it. They didn't have to go through all the ass pain that, like I kind of had to. People always like, oh my God, it's great. DT are trailblazers. Like, yeah, that's great, but can I be like the number 10th guy that went through it? So all the polys are already done, and I just easier way to go through it. But,
you guys cut down the trees, and I'll be more than happy to walk the path.
Right?
Oh my God.
Well, you do what you do, what you can do.
Well, I know, so on your path of recovery, sports played a really big role in sort of redefining your boundaries. So much during our recovery is told what we're not really going to be able to do anymore. And most people would fixate on that. And you're definitely not in that category. In the midst of my recovery, I pursued adaptive sports, same as you. And I was really lucky to have my fellow American Legion folks from Post 166 in Goose Creek. I always have a hard time saying that. Post 166. Anyway, they helped raise money so that I could buy an air rifle to do training. And I know that you are also somebody who loves adaptive sports. First of all, what brought you to adaptive sports? How did it change you? And were there any organizations like the American Legion helped me? Were there organizations that helped you?
I remember, when I got hurt, I was an athlete. I played baseball, football, soccer. So once everything starts settling down, you're starting to think of your extracurricular stuff. I'm like, I used to like playing sports. Can I still do this? And luckily there at BAMC, but really once the CFI came up, the Center for Intrepid, there in San Antonio, once I started going there, they started to introduce you to adaptive sports. That's how I first learned about it. Because obviously one that doesn't do adaptive sport has no idea what it is. And so when they started introducing me to it, and their goal was, I remember, is like to kind of try and get you back integrated into society. Because sometimes, guys are kind of, can I get back there? I'm kind of, hesitant. And sports is a way to kind of get you back into society. And so they're the first ones that introduced me to it. And then from there, I remember it was, what was Operation Comfort there in San Antonio. They're the ones that would have practices for anyone that ever wanted to try adaptive sports would come out. And that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to get into that to kind of somewhat, you could say, feel like my old self, like I'm playing sports again. And that's how I started to excel in that. And obviously, they introduced you to, at the time, the Olympics/Paralympics had military adaptive camps that service members can go to and be with a bunch of other service members in adaptive sports. So that's how I got into it. And the one organization that helped me was the US. So same thing. I was starting to get into air rifle, and they helped me get my first air rifle so I could practice. And from that, they just, I just kept excelling in it. I never thought I was going to be, a world record holder in shot put, discus, and javelin, or win competitions. I was just going out there to just kind of feel like myself, because that's how I feel when I'm out there throwing or out there shooting or out there cycling. Everything around me is null and void. It's just me. I feel like me, like my old self, and it's a great feeling. And and then I got to meet other people, doing adaptive sports. One of the most inspiring thing that I ever saw, I remember, was going to my first kind of competition, and I saw little kids with missing legs running. And I saw them with the biggest smile. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. That inspired me. And, because we were always like, what inspires you? I was
Mhm.
like, when I see something like that. So, I saw that also, being in adaptive sports, to show the world that I'm still here, that I'm still living, and to show others that if you have a bad day or you're going through something like I am, or anything similar to it, you can still enjoy life. You can still do sports. And there's a lot of times when I know I'm not going to win anything, and that's okay. I just do it to show other people, because like that little kid that was running with their prosthetics inspired me. If I can go out there and show, hey, here's a guy with missing fingers throwing up 250 pounds on a bench, or out there shooting, or out there running or throwing, if I can help them inspire them, then it's worth it. And that's why I do it. And to this day, I still go, I'll compete. I'm not competing to win, but I'm just competing to help inspire others.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I have to deal with some of what you're talking about, and I have to remember the impact you have on others as somebody who has an obvious physical injury. I also want to add in that those kids' trust in those prosthetics borders on the supernatural. They just jump and run around like nothing's wrong. And it's beautiful, because, the upside of everything that we've been through these past 2 decades is that prosthetics are incredible. They're incredible. I've got a mechanical leg that's better than anything that existed in the first 10 years, both computer and mechanical. It's incredible. So one of the things that you have to deal with when you're somebody who's been obviously injured, that has a physical injury, is that you get a strange sort of expectant praise, and it's always uncomfortable. And I always wondered if it would ever get more comfortable when someone comes up and calls you a hero, or when somebody comes up and on my end, I think I finally realized that it should always be uncomfortable, because if you ever get comfortable with that, then you've started to think that way about yourself, maybe, or whatever. So I guess my question to you is, how do you balance? I mean, if somebody calls me a hero, I don't feel like I'm a hero. I don't feel like I did anything outside of what any one of my guys would have done for me. Um, but I do know that people look at me and they see me in the gym, and they see me putting up, weight, and they see me pushing myself. And there are times when I use those people that have come up to me and told me that I inspire them to go to the gym on days when I didn't want to go. When it's rainy, I don't feel good. I got a headache. Find 1,000 other reasons to cry about it. So how do you deal with those people? I on my end, I finally just say thank you and shut up, because it feels like the more I talk, the stupider I look.
No, for me, it's still, and people always say that to me. It's weird. I'm like, nah. It's like, I'm no hero. It's like, I just did what I had to do to get back and be with my family.
Yeah.
And again, for me, it's weird. It's still weird. Everyone says that I'm inspiring, I'm motivational, I'm a hero. It's still weird. I'm like, nah, I'm just DT. I'm just a guy that likes to hang out with his friends, play some Call of Duty, maybe drink some Jack and Coke once in a while. But that's who I am. Uh, but you just sometimes just say thanks. But it's, for me, it's never comfortable. Yeah, I remember when we were thinking of the title for my book. I always knew I wanted to have promise in there. But I remember, I think it was the publisher said, let's call it a hero's promise. And I'm like, no. If someone was writing a
Give me
book
the
about me,
heebie-jeebies.
yeah, if someone was, you know, writing about me, okay, they want to name it that, but it's me telling my story. And for me, saying here's, it almost, you know, it's like, boy, you're pretty self-absorbed, aren't you?
Only if you were a Navy SEAL could you get away with that.
All right. That was a heroes push-up program. uh, I know, I bust my friends that are SEALs all the time. It's like, dude, you guys got to add Navy SEAL to everything that you do.
Yeah, and a trident, please.
All right, to China. But yeah, it's just, it's still, it's never comfortable for me, you know, because I just, in my eyes, I don't see myself like that. You know, just DT. You know, that's who I am. You know, like to bust chops with my friends. You know, like Stacy, watching her, you know, run like molasses on the track. But you know,
It's true. I am not a fast person. I don't
That's
think
why she has horses.
this is true. I ride. I don't need to go anywhere on my own feet, right? And besides, they needed a token gal. I filled that bucket for them. But in all seriousness, DT, the one thing I want to switch gears really quick and talk about, because, you know, all appearances, you look like you got your stuff together, right? Motivated, self-helping in so many ways. Of course, you've got a great support network, but it takes a lot of tenacity from within yourself to wake up and say, I'm going to live this day and put one foot in front of the other. What happens on those days? And I know you have them, I have them. Almost every veteran has those days where it's, I don't know if I can get out of bed today. What do you do to swing the leg over the mattress and just say, I'm going to do it?
Right. Yeah, we all have those days, you know. Again, I'll never be a guy that stands here and says I never had those days. We all have them. But for me, it's like, because most people don't realize, for me, it hurts every day I get up. It hurts every day, but I have to do it. And when I'm having those real hard days, I just think of, you know, what makes me happy? What do I enjoy? I love going to the gym. I get up, I go to the gym. Or you know, if I'm still freaking kind of in that funk, I'll get in my car and drive. I love getting in my car and drive. Or just sitting on the back porch, you know, with my dog, play with my dog. It's those little things that helps us, that helps me, you know, that you got to remind yourself, what brings joy in my life? What keeps me going? You know, and for me, it's those little simple things. Me walking to my barn and messing with my cars there. You know, my '72 Chevelle. You know, I'll be out there messing with it. You know, and just walking with my dog. You know, sometimes it's hard for us to see the simpler things. You know, I almost sound like freaking Zombieland, rules of, you know, how to survive Zombieland. But yeah, enjoying those little things like that. That help again, that helps me. Yeah, it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle getting up. I was like, oh my God. I was like, do I really want to go to the gym today? Do I really want to get up? But you have to. You have to keep going, you know. And for me, really, my spark is my boy, my son. I want to show him that dad's not giving up. Yeah, dad's gonna have bad days, but he's not gonna spiral down that rabbit hole and stay in those dark days. He's gonna overcome. He's gonna get out and keep pushing forward. And so that's what I try and do. We all have our own little knickknacks that helps us, and we just gotta find them. We gotta find what helps us enjoy the little things in life.
So you closed your book with your sort of signature tagline. It's the one that made, I think, former First Lady Michelle Obama blush a little bit. And you did it in front of, you know, millions of people watching on TV. Can you share with us what that tagline is and why it's your mantra?
So I ended my book like I ended But you're talking about at the Invictus Games, which was live, that had no delay at all. Had no idea. So they whoever was watching heard the whole thing. But I always end it with stay strong and never fucking quit. Obviously, the never fucking quit can be an acronym NFQ, and that's how a lot of people know it as NFQ. But the stay strong, that's actually something that my son helped come up with. It's an interesting story. When I was practicing shooting, I have my earplugs, so you can kind of zone in, you hear nothing around you. And I couldn't hear him because he has to help me load my pellets. And I would come off the line and my teammates are just laughing. They're just giggling. Dude, I was like, what's so funny? It's like your son. I was like, he's like a little coach, man. He's like, come on, Daddy. Stay strong, finish strong. And when I heard that, I was like, dude, that fits us so well. So, I got it tattooed on my forearms. And when he turned 18, he got it tattooed on his forearms. And the NFQ was something that I always had as an instructor, that I would tell this to my students, and it evolved from there. And, now everyone associates those terms with me. It's funny when I see people get into tattooed and somebody says, hey man, I tattooed the NFQ, or I tattooed the stay strong, finish strong. And I'm like, I should trademark so that they compete.
I'm gonna do a total Mike Tyson and get NFQ right on my cheek for you.
Nice.
Tell me how that goes with Andy.
Yeah, probably not gonna go over very well.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
All right.
Israel, I gotta say, man, as much as I'm gonna make you feel a little awkward here and let you know that you are inspiring, and I do appreciate you. And hearing your story and hearing you tell me, a little bit about your son and stuff like that, that stuff resonates with me on a level. It's beautiful. It is a reminder to me to stay present and to keep working on not just myself, but my family unit as a whole. So I just want to say how much I appreciate the time you've spent with us. So before you sign off here, is there anything else that you want to share with the alphas that we didn't discuss?
Yeah, the other thing is, like, on a podcast or a speech, we hit major points, but we can't really go into the whole story of my story or my journey, I like to say. So if anyone, like you said, you can see on Stacy's screen, my book, The Patriot's Promise, that goes more into detail, more into, my journey. And so if anyone wants to, read it, you can find it anywhere books are sold, or if you're like me, who doesn't like reading, and yes, I'm an author that doesn't like reading, you get the Audible.
Which is really good. So well narrated, by the way.
I was
You
going
like
to
the
say,
guy
who's your
picked?
narrator?
It was funny because they wanted me to do it, and I was like, and one of my friends had done it, and they said, DT, it's some long, hard days. And I was like, well, I can't do it with my voice. I'll lose my voice after one day. So they sent me like 10 different voice actors or voiceover guys. And the guy I picked sounded like it was his story. Like it was not just reading a book, but like felt like this guy's going through this. And so that's what I liked about it. And that's what everyone's
that way too. I connected with the guy who read your book. I was sad because you weren't going to do it. I understood that there were like sort of physical limitations that could be a hurdle doing something that length, but great choice on an actor. Wonderful. We really connected with it. So yes.
But it was also funny, right? It was at least, that was the best part when my friends would call me. It's like, oh my God, dude, you had me on a roller coaster.
Yes.
I'm laughing at one point, then I'm crying. I'm laughing again, then I'm crying. I'm like, I did my job. But yeah, that was the one thing I wanted to do, because I think laughter is also very healing.
Yeah.
It helps heal the soul. And I wanted to show that you can still laugh, you can still have fun, even though what happened to me.
Well, we're going to have links to all your stuff, all your social connection, anything else we talked about in the show notes. So, but you can tell us where we can find more about your work.
What was that?
So can you tell us more about where we can find out more about your work?
Oh yeah, you can, obviously you can find me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. Twitter, or X now, but also on my website, which is deltorostrong.com. You can find me on there. But on my social media, a lot of times that's where a lot of people reach out to me. Like I said, on Facebook is Israel DT Del Toro Jr. Instagram is IDT-21. And then Twitter is I Del Toro. So, you can find me on there if you want to reach out, if you need to talk.
Awesome. DT, my brother, please give my best to Carmen and Guerrero. Guerrero, am I saying that? Guerrero?
No,
Guerrero.
well, there you go. You said it better there. Bueno.
I don't speak Spanish very well, but I'm going to learn. I was listening to the audiobook and I heard you and Carmen call him that all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to try that.
That's all right.
E.T. the third. Anyway, but anyway, give my best to your family. All seriousness, I love you so much, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us. I appreciate you. So for all you alphas out there, be sure to check out his book, especially the Audible book, which is amazing. Alpha, stick around for some Scuttlebutt right after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
Be the one to save one veteran.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one to reach out when a veteran is struggling.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
Okay, alphas. We hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Darn.
Man, Joe.
Language.
Now listen, I've seen more and more veterans panhandling for money and food on the side of the road than I ever have in a long time. But I will admit this, I don't know for sure whether they're actually legitimate veterans or not, but some are. And it got me thinking, what brought them to this place? What was it? Was it unemployment? Was it substance use disorder? Was it mental health issues that haven't been addressed? Maybe all of the above. So, like I normally do, I decided to do a deep dive into food insecurity amongst the veteran population. According to the Food Research and Action Center, millions of veterans face food insecurity. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that's the USDA, if you didn't know, Economic Research Service report says that 11.1% of the veterans between the ages of 18 and 64 lived in households reporting food insecurity. After controlling for demographic characteristics that normally predict food insecurity, such as age, educational attainment, and income, this report found that risk of food insecurity is actually 7.4% higher among the veterans than non-veterans of the same age. Certain subgroups of veterans are particularly at risk for food insecurity. Polar et al. Found 22.5% of veterans earning low incomes, and that's those who are below 200% of the federal poverty line, reported food insecurity. So especially those that were younger than 65, unemployed, in poor health, and had experienced serious psychological distress. Hello, veteran community. Higher rates of food insecurity are associated with medical and trauma-related comorbidities, as well as unmet social needs, including housing instability, according to this study focused on veterans screened by the U.S. Veterans Health Administration. Additionally, this study found that veterans of color and women veterans were at a higher risk of food insecurity. Across the nation, 1.2 million veterans participate in supplemental nutritional assistance programs, our nation's first line of defense against hunger that helps households put food on the table while also stimulating the local economies. Yet, there are still too many eligible veterans who are missing out. Barriers such as lack of information about SNAP and other nutritional programs, application challenges, the stigma that can impede access. As one study noted, many veterans live by the motto of, quote, making do with what we got, end quote. And, this is my favorite, express strong reluctance to seek assistance from food pantries or similar charitable donations. Alphas, stop making do. And I am here to tell you that I grew up at a time when it was difficult. And I grew up in a military household, and I grew up hungry. I grew up having to go to food stamps, having to go to the food pantry. And I'm not proud about it, but I'm not ashamed of it either, because we needed it. And this wasn't a handout, it was a hand up. And so don't look at it as being something you should be above. If you need help, if you're hungry, ask for a hand up, not a handout. Talk to the American Legion VSO about the temporary finance assistance grant and apply for SNAP. Don't go hungry. In the meantime, we all need to work toward decreasing the stigma of support by lifting up the federal nutrition programs as critical supports for millions of people that anyone may need at some point in their life due to circumstances. Reject policies that stigmatize individuals for using food and nutritional assistance programs, and advocate to strengthen and improve access to the federal nutrition programs. And just so you know, it is there to support others like my sister, who was on active duty when she had to go on WIC to support her daughter. There is no crime in taking a hand up.
You have to take care of you. So if you had not had those things, you wouldn't be in a position now to be able to have such an impact on people the way that you do, Stacy. I think these programs are beautiful, and there's a touch of when you've been brought low in life, whether it's injury, military, whether you grew up in an unfortunate financial situation. There's a level of humility that sort of hits you, where you start to realize that I have to survive regardless of how this makes me feel. And so that means that we've got to work towards breaking that stigma and trying to push people towards, hey, take care of you so that you can take care of others. You know, you can't take care of the people around you if you aren't taking care of yourself. If I didn't have such a great support system, when I got married, I had $27 in the bank. Like, you know, we were never in poverty because I had a great family that could support me. So how do people make it without that? And I'm starting to realize that some just suffered. And so please reach out, get the support, not just for you, but for your family. And especially if you've got kids, you know, there's no downside to helping them. They may not even know. You just need to take care of you and take care of your kids.
And my final thought on that is, if you see somebody on the side of the road with a sign that says, "I'm hungry, I need food," and it happens to say that they're a veteran, do not take for granted that they are or aren't. Be sure to point them in the right direction. Take the time to help that veteran and give them a hand up, my friends.
And depending on your community, your local post may actively be combating food insecurity themselves. We've got a bunch of entries from our Bravo Zulu files that illustrate the different ways posts can help. You can host a food drive like the members of American Legion Post 66 in Edmonds, Washington. I didn't realize it was 2 Washingtons. That's crazy to me. Who collected more than 200 pounds of food, $500 in cash, and warm winter clothes that they distributed to multiple veteran families in South Snohomish, I knew that, County, who were homeless or struggling financially. Can support a local food pantry like August Matson, American Legion Post 71 in Gladstone, Michigan. Oh, goodness. I didn't know there were 2 Michingtons. Gladstone, and just in case the locals call it Gladstone, I'm going to say Gladstone too. I'm going to cover all my bases. Or Gladstone.
It could
Michigan?
be. Could be a hard.
That could be it. Yeah. The Post raised and donated $400 to Gladstone. Okay, we're going to stick with that one for this. St. Vincent de Paul Food Pantry when they heard the shelves were going bare. I love when people just see a need and go, hey, we're going to do something here. That's really awesome. So be a resource like Post 1 in, oh, this is good. I like this one. Butte, Montana.
I think that's Butte. It's Butte.
But I wanted to say Butte, Stacy.
But you said Butte like 5 times already.
Oh yeah, SCUTTLEBUTT. It could be booty.
No,
could be. No, it's not. Okay. For real. These people are doing something great. I'll give them credit. Like Post One in Butte, Montana, who hosted the Deer Lodge Food Pantry during the holidays and distributed more than 1,000 pounds of food to 103 families.
Wow.
103 families. So you got to think that didn't just touch 100 lives. I mean, that was potentially, 400 or 500 people. That's incredible.
Well, considering there are 104 families living in Butte, Montana, that means they had full coverage. So
Yeah,
great.
the one family is the one who ran the whole thing, the extra family.
Yes.
So you could also partner with local businesses like American Legion Post 23 in Bowling Green, Kentucky, who joined forces with Mission Barbecue. I am literally hungry just
Love
reading the
Mission.
word barbecue.
Oh, gosh.
To
Love it.
provide hot meals to homeless veterans, as well as needed toiletries and clothing as part of a day of service event. So bravo Zulu to every one of those posts, and thank you all for stepping up for your community. I hope all the alphas listening are inspired to follow in your footsteps and find ways to help in their communities. You see a need, fix a need.
Yep, I agree. Great job, everybody. That's tremendous. All right, alphas, thanks for listening. You can subscribe to our podcast or newsletter, or send us some mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next week.
Not if I see you first.